So my name's Jorge Daniel Taillant. I run the Center for Human Rights and Environment. It's an organization that was based originally in Argentina, and we moved to the United States about 3.5 years ago. For many reasons that had to do with personal safety and some persecution that we had to face because of some of the industries that we're engaged on. So the issue that brings us together today is fracking. And fracking, as we know, is a very controversial activity that's happening mostly in the United States, but there are many efforts around the world to begin to frack. Colombia today is considering starting fracking in some of the areas around the country. We've been working in Argentina for a number of years addressing initiation of fracking there. Argentina is really the only country besides the United States that has had in the last several years a significant advancement with fracking. Originally about 50 or so wells were drilled, and we're now up to about 2,000 wells. Colombia is at a stage where Argentina was about 5 or 6 years ago, where they had found a reserve, and there was a proposition at that time to develop those reserves. What we have learned since that time is basically that fracking has succeeded, if we want to call it succeeded, for a number of reasons in the United States. It really had to do with speculation coming from financial sectors willing to invest in high-risk petroleum extraction activity. In Argentina, after 5 or 6 years where this has been happening, we can say pretty strongly today that fracking economically is not viable. What we're seeing is that the government has had to step in to subsidize oil and gas prices so that companies can continue to attempt to frack in the hopes that in time they will become sustainable. In Colombia, there is an attempt now to do the same thing that occurred in Argentina, and Mexico actually has recently also gotten underway in a similar process. The reality also is that fracking poses very serious threats not only to the environment and to water, for example, but also to the air and to land. Now, these are the costs that go along with the activity. We also see across the region and around the world that really this is an activity that is proposed by big oil companies, but behind them are a lot of subcontractors that carry out the work. What we've seen in Argentina is a lot of activity to initiate the industry, but frankly, we don't see the local development that has been promised in the sector. An example is the town of Añelo, which is the heart of the oil and gas industry in Argentina. It's a very small town that today is overrun by very large trucks. Hundreds of trucks, a day are going through this town. A lot of temporary housing. Housing prices have gone up exponentially to provide housing to foreigners that are coming in to do the activity. But we don't really see the local development that was promised. The local sex trade building, it's basically a prostitute house, which is illegal, is larger than the local hospital. If a woman who is pregnant and wants to have a child, she has to travel 150 kilometers to the nearest hospital. Unfortunately, we have not seen the development that was promised from the industry. I think Colombia is in a similar situation to Argentina several years ago, and today there is even an attempt by certain parties to prohibit the activity in the country, as has happened in other countries like France, like Germany, Ireland, and others, and many states, for example, in the United States, which have banned the activity because of the dangers and the risks that it proposes. So what we're seeing here is a debate that is really just starting about whether or not to let fracking in. Ecopetrol, which is the national petroleum company, wants to explore fracking. They certainly don't have the capacity to do so, so they would also rely on foreign technology and foreign participation to make fracking work to the extent that it could in Colombia. We also are very concerned about the natural resources in Colombia, the lush greenery, the water resources. This is what identifies Colombia as a country and as a people. Fracking, in our view, is putting this at risk, and we don't see a viable future for the country in pursuing this type of energy.